Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. This time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. Sometimes when I'm reasoning about us, I know you got me, it's so effortless. Back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. No, this time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
Welcome everybody to the FPV News. It's good to be here with you, and it's good to be here with you, Blunty. How you doing today?
Good, Joshua. How's it going today?
I'm good. Very good. I'm happy that we have got news this week. Last week we ducked out because there just really wasn't a lot of news, was there?
Yeah, wasn't much going on. So there was about to be stuff going on with the Dominator launching, but
Yeah.
not much news to talk about. So didn't want to waste too much time. So we
Yeah, I
skipped
think
the
you're-
news. But
Exact words were, I'm sure we could talk for an hour. And I was like,
Yes.
nah. Because I was working furiously on the release video for the Walksnail FatShark Dominator avatar. I was up till 3 in the morning editing that video. And then I rendered and I started the upload, and then I went to bed for like 4 hours. And then I woke up and I finished doing this. It was a big day for me. But so
what
worth
are
it.
what are we calling it? Dominator? Avatar? We gotta call it something, right?
FatShark is adamant that they don't make the avatar goggle. That like
Okay.
obviously it's like made from the same mold or a very similar mold. Like obviously the RF receiver module is the same. Like no one disputes that Walksnail makes the So if we call the FatShark goggle the avatar, FatShark will be annoyed, which I care a small amount about, but also we may be slightly misleading customers into believing that they are in fact the same thing. And I think that I don't think they're made in the same factory, for example. I don't have proof of that. So I kind of don't want to just conflate them, but it does make it really annoying to talk about them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very odd, I would say.
I agree.
So
I have a theory about what happened. I have a
interesting.
theory.
Should we talk about that, or should we do it after the Should we
Maybe
do it in
we'll
a
talk
segment?
about it. We should just stick to our script, our outlines. How you guys doing today? Very glad to see you guys in the chat. As always, we'll be monitoring your questions. But this is the news. This is not a Q&A stream. So although I will be monitoring, you can see right here, I will be monitoring. We won't be necessarily reading questions like we will. We're going to be focusing on the news. And if you want to make sure you're keeping up on all the things we're talking about, there are links in the video description. There's show notes and links and so forth. But someone said you assume we're here for news. We're here for the Bardwell BLunty dynamic. Wow. Well, that's the one thing you're guaranteed to get.
Yeah, like I said, that's what I was saying about last week. We could just talk for an hour. I'm sure we'll find something to talk about. But
people really liked our little video game discussion. Some people did. I mean, maybe people hated it and tuned out, but a few people really liked it. They said we should do it more.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I always enjoy it. We've got a game thing. We have a game tie into FPV this week. Found a way to get games on the news. So don't worry.
I don't see it.
It's
I'm
down
sure
there.
you'll tell me about it. I'm sure you'll tell me about it when we get there.
All right. Yes.
Let's go ahead, though, and let's start with of all the times we've done PSAs, this is one of the dumbest and most significant ones.
Yeah, I would agree.
PSAs, public service announcements, we always start with them because although they don't affect everybody, if they do affect you, it's usually a big deal. And so we want you to make sure you know about it. And this one relates to flight controllers with the 20689 gyro. And the first, are we going to tell people like what flight controllers we're specifically talking about? Because nobody knows what gyro they have.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say it might be important to look at this point if you buy a new flight controller, just in case your manufacturer did something stupid. So today,
speaking of
stupid
what manufacturer
category,
would do something stupid?
Yeah, we're talking about BetaFPV.
Oh!
So BetaFPV, Mr. Shutterbug brings us a video explaining the issue, but basically BetaFPV has shipped their F4 1S flight controllers, with those 1S flight controllers, they have the ICM 20689 gyroscope. So most gyros we know for the MPU 6000, that's the typical ones. We've heard of something about the BMI gyros lately, the BMI 270s. ICM is a different option from TDK, who makes them, and that some people have chosen to use. There was a bug we reported on in RC6 that causes your flight controller to brick the gyro, so the gyro will stop working. In some cases, it was temporary. In some cases, it didn't happen. And in some cases, it was permanent.
Now
Which is unfortunate.
Notice that here in Mr. Shutterbug's video, which is linked in the show notes, he's moving the whoop on the yaw axis, but the on-screen whoop is not moving at all. His yaw axis basically doesn't exist. And this is caused... Now, this was a known bug in BetaFlight 4.3 RC6. There's a known bug that they put it right at the top of the show notes. Of the release notes. There's a bug. It can brick your gyro. And so theoretically, anybody who flashes RC6 to a board with a 2689 gyro had fair warning, although you're going to rant about that at the end. But this is even worse. Because these people aren't flashing BetaFlight 4.3 RC6, are they?
Right. They're buying a flight controller with it on it. And it's the manufacturers who are shipping it. And unfortunately, basically you plug it in and it bricks that gyro. So the way to recover this, so if anybody's having this issue...
You buried the lead there. I'm sorry. Can I pause you?
Yeah.
Let's rewind that. You bought a brand new BetaFPV Tiny Whoop. BetaFPV shipped it with RC6 on it. Why would you ship with a release candidate? I don't know. Maybe it has because they need ExpressLRS support, and that's the only way to get it. Fine.
Yeah.
The minute you plug in, the first time it loads that firmware, because they didn't QC it, they just flashed it and shipped it. It's never been powered up since they flashed it. The minute you do that, RC6 bricks the gyro some of the time. You didn't flash RC6.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it sucks. I mean, listen, it sucks, but like, at this point, it's just BetaFPV. Like, this is very BetaFPV to do. But
so there's a workaround.
There is a workaround. So if you have this board and you have not booted it yet, or you booted it and it hasn't died, I would consider never booting it again normally, and then holding the boot button down and plugging it in so that it boots into DFU. That means the Betaflight software will not talk to the gyro and won't write the weird index bit stuff it was doing, and then you can flash to the release candidate version or the release version of Betaflight 4.3, and you should be all good to go.
Now, 661FPV is disagreeing with us here. 661FPV in the chat says they must have powered it up after the factory flashed the board. Which
I don't think that's true.
Would make sense if they were QC checking. So they flash these chips, and the way they flash them at the factory, I don't know exactly how they do it, but there's no reason that it actually needs to run the code after it flashes the code, and there's no reason that they would necessarily have powered these up and QC'd them after they manufactured them. So I think this is and in fact, Mr. Shutterbug tested this, and the problem is that it doesn't brick the 2689 gyro 100% of the time.
Yeah, it seems to be batch related. It's hard to tell because TDK is also confused about this, and they don't really understand how the gyros are getting bricked either. So there's a lot of confusion going on, and they're also just like, why are you guys using these? Because they're old gyros, and we said not to use these. Yeah. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on.
The takeaway is this. If you bought a flight controller with a 20689 gyro, and especially if you know for a fact that it's like this BetaFPV one that we know is shipping with RC6 on it, the best thing to do would be do not power it up, hold down the bootloader button, plug in and make it power up in bootloader mode so it doesn't run the code, and then immediately flash it to Betaflight 4.3 release, which doesn't have this problem as far as we know.
Yes.
It's going to wipe your config though. You're going to lose your factory config, right?
That's correct. Yeah, you probably just want to go on the BetaFPV website and get it. If you have a bind and fly, then you're going to go to that bind and fly on the BetaFPV website, get your CLI dump and stuff, and apply that. If you just bought a board, then it shouldn't matter, and you should just be able to work.
661FPV, obviously they have to power up the chip to flash it, right? But I don't know the exact way that they flash it, whether they flash it in DFU mode or whether they flash it in some STM programming mode, but my guess would be that the chip is in programming mode. They write the code to the chip, and the code is not run. It's at the moment that the SPI bus tries to initialize the gyro that the gyro dies. So if they flashed the code but never ran the code, then that's what we're assuming is happening.
Correct.
Okay. Let's save it for the rant.
Yeah, that was kind of the idea. We'll just yell at them.
I want to start ranting, but this is PSAs. We're going to do the rant at the end. We'll save it for the rant, and we will move on. We covered our butts. Next up, probably one of the most exciting things to happen in FPV, the FatShark Dominator HD / Walksnail avatar has launched. Finally, we have actual facts instead of the past when people got sick of us speculating. Where are we going to start with this damn thing, Blunty?
Well, so I figured we could just kind of give a quick idea of what happened. So basically, we heard that they were going to be shipping units soon. We didn't know when that was. Apparently, there was a timetable that had been decided that we weren't sure of, but ended up panning out to be the real timetable, which was I believe it was the 29th. Right? Was that the day, the embargo day? Yeah, the 29th.
Yeah, 29th, Wednesday the 29th.
However, on the embargo day, and we found out a few days before the embargo day, the VTXs weren't going to be ready. And the VTXs came in a little bit late for folks to get shipped out. So I think, for me, the first thing that was striking, we've had all these cases along the way. If you've been following the story for a while, you know that there was some confusion when they originally, they showed the goggle at Rampage, and then there was FatShark, or there was Walksnail labeling and everything, but they weren't talking about the partner they were using. And then obviously we had all the drama going on with who's making what and where and what, right?
Right.
But then,
and that drama
even
continues.
Now, but yeah, even now we get to the launch date, and then for some reason, even though they had not officially said anywhere the 29th, it's just like back channels had said that, and they had apparently told reviewers that the 29th was the date. They decided to stick to the 29th as the date, and then not have the VTXs ready for the launch for the retailers, which I think is crazy. Like, what? Nobody knew your date. You make up the date.
I have a theory about that. They said at Rampage that they would ship in June.
Yep.
If they pushed it back till the VTX, they would have missed their June ship date and everybody would have crucified them.
Yeah.
So
I
by
have a
shipping
theory.
on June 29th, they technically met their ship date. What's your theory?
I have a theory. My theory is June is also the end of a fiscal quarter.
Oh.
So you could bill everybody once you ship a goggle. So you bill everyone. And then that's in the fiscal quarter.
They
so
bill
you can
the
report on
retailer.
it.
They bill the retailers.
Yep.
Do you think the retailers pay up front? Yes, I'm sure that they do. Interesting.
That's my thing. I think when the goggles launch, then you can put that revenue down on the boards, and that'll show up in the quarterlies, and they'll be super excited about it when they tell investors.
Makes sense.
And they'll hope that will affect stock prices. And they can push even longer until they can sell the teal drones they were expecting. And if you don't know, I'm talking about Red Cat. That's my pie in the sky info hat theory.
Josh FPV says June isn't their end of quarter. What? Blunty's left us.
What would their end of quarter be?
Nice.
What would their end of quarter be?
I mean, I guess you don't have to have your fiscal year end on December 31st, although I'm not
the year.
an
Well,
accountant.
that's what I mean. It doesn't. I mean, I guess I know what you're saying.
Josh FPV says it's July 31st. I don't know why.
Okay.
I mean, so
Maybe
there you
that's
go,
true.
Blunty. Screw your tinfoil hat. Shows what you know. We don't know why they did that. I have a theory.
Yeah.
I'll give you a theory. My theory is that the whole right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing thing. The whole launch has been a complete cluster. For
true.
example, FatShark announced the goggles, and then like 20 minutes later, the Walksnail website went live, even though FatShark was acting like the partner was a secret. And it kind of felt like Walksnail was just doing whatever they were doing without necessarily coordinating and so forth. So it just feels like the whole thing is full of sort of bad communication and weird logistics. And then this is the shipping the VTXs late is just an extension of that. I don't think there's a good reason, but who knows?
Yeah.
So then the system was received. How was it received? Well, I know I did a review of it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, from what I saw and from my perspective, all I could think was blurry. Like
Yeah,
that's the
super
biggest, blurry mess, I think, is the description I used when I watched the original stuff.
Yep.
You showed a couple times, and in a couple of videos we saw like literally just squares of missing stuff where they just had filled in the last frame and had not updated. So there was missing, like the bottom of a pole was missing for multiple frames, was just gone.
Very weird.
Yeah.
Very weird. Something they were doing with the compression. And if you just hovered, like normally with H.264 and H.265 compression, when you have a static image, what you expect is that the details fill in. But like there were cases where you would hover and there was kind of like, like in the Matrix, the letters kind of go. This was kind of the opposite of that, like little blocks kind of going dunk, 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 up the screen. It was really weird.
Yeah.
And like always, they said, "Oh, that's not that wasn't like that in our testing. That's really weird." And then they released a new firmware that actually made it much, much better, in my opinion. And
I think a lot of people ended up seeing that as well. Like I put up your video if you wanted to show it. I don't know in the show notes there, but basically the new firmware. I mean, it's like night and day to me. It's like
I think it is.
Yeah, it's like
still
way better.
Still a lot of room for improvement. Still,
100%.
in my opinion, not as good as DJI. But I don't know whether to be impressed or annoyed that they went from like a 4 out of 10 to like a 6 out of 10 by just snapping their fingers. Because then I'm like, well, why didn't you do that before? But on the other hand, does that mean that if they just keep snapping their fingers, they could get to an 8 out of 10? I mean, because that's very encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just very confusing, the whole cycle. Like, how did we get to a point where you had such a big improvement through a simple firmware update that you released? Today it's actually out for the public, but came out right.
People were asking
right
where can I get that firmware? I didn't link to it. It wasn't available that day, but I thought that I wanted to get the word out that it got better. They did the work. They deserve the credit, and I put that video out. The firmware is available now on FatShark's website. It wasn't available yesterday when I released the video, but it is now. I should update the video. Go ahead.
So yeah, I just figured we've also got the Walksnail response here. Maybe we could take a look at that real quick just to see, their comments about the situation, because we did talk about them, so we should show them probably. And they basically just said, our first batch of reviews have released. Indeed, our products have a long way to go. Some issues incurred on a few videos. We're still troubleshooting. We've upgraded new firmware and fixed some problems. New firmware needs a lot of details we need to complete. So, basically they're saying we're still working on it. We're making a new system for the first time. We've never done this before. We're going to get firmware out for you, and we hope you support us, that sort of thing. So
yeah,
it looks good. This is something I would expect to see from like an HD0, right? And
I'll say this. I noticed.
FatShark doesn't make a statement like this. Orca doesn't make a statement like this.
You're 100%
make
right.
A statement like this.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right. There are some companies who have more of a defensive vibe, and a how dare you? And I will say, I noticed years ago that Chinese customer service figured out that the right thing to say when there was a problem, they figured out what to say. We're so sorry, we'll make it right. But then in many cases, and I'm not pointing at Walksnail here specifically, but in many cases, they would say the words because they figured out that's what Western customers wanted to hear, and then they wouldn't follow through.
Yes.
So
I think the difference is that this came with a firmware, right?
It did.
Yeah,
so we have
that's the indicator. Is like, hey, you could say stuff and not do anything, but you literally said stuff and released a firmware at the same time.
We have to keep watching when I think that when a product has a problem and falls flat, and then the CEO comes out and says, "We understand. We need to do better." I'm like, okay, now what actions will come with this? And the fact that it came with an updated firmware. Now, is that going to keep happening, or is that just like the oh shit of release day? It needs to keep happening and keep getting better. And I think that Carl from HD0 is the gold standard in this respect, in that he's been walking this walk for over a year more. And Walksnail, I would love to see them rise to that. They have ways to go and time before you. Yeah,
it's a good sign starting. I would say, I understand both sides of it, right? Why would you launch a goggle that's all blurry and messy? Maybe they were forced into a timeline they didn't expect. Whatever happened, right? But at least we got some good graces by them issuing a statement and immediately basically fixing the blurry mess and getting it to a more improved state. We're going to look at in the next part here some issues that definitely are still happening, and there's a lot of them. But yeah.
Nice to see Bot Grinder in the chat. Not that it's nice to see all of you. Some of you more than others, though. I think nice to see you there, Bot Grinder. I make it out to his streams every now and then. I always feel like there's very few people in FPV who I feel like a celebrity when they drop in, or they're like, most of it's like, Drew's here, he's a buddy of mine. With Bot Grinder, I don't know why, something about him. He shows up and I'm like, oh, Bot Grinder's in my chat.
Hey, he's a cool guy, so I understand.
Yeah. Not that. See, I don't know how to say this without insulting other people by omission. But there you go.
I feel like Bot Grinder is like the cool kid in the hallway, who you were like, I hope I get to hang out with that kid. That sort of thing. So.
Yeah, he is. I agree. Okay. All right. Now let's get the fangirl hat off.
Okay.
Okay. Now we're gonna go to the next story, right? Okay. I gotta roll.
So now we talked about basically the system and where we're at. We're looking for more updates. There's a lot of broken stuff. I don't know if you have an easy list for that, but I know there was like issues with 1200 milliwatts and having to go back to 700 to make the firmware work. And I know there are features that are missing. There's just quite a few problems. But one of the things that we saw as well come through was some information about the inside of the goggles. So,
and this is coming from the FPV WTF team. Do you want to real quick tell people who they are, because it matters? FPV WTF is a website you can go to, and it's also the team, Junus and the rest of the team there, that went through and hacked the DJI goggles to get the root hack, so that we could basically get root access to the DJI goggles, change firmwares, and dig in there and do all kinds of crazy stuff. By the way, that's in beta testing, and hopefully soon there'll be a browser version of that where you can flash all your goggles and do all the magic stuff. But anyway, that's all happening, and they did the root on the DJI goggles. So of course, the first thing they did was get somebody to share the goggles images with them and dive right in. So
M. Bundy has credit here for getting those goggles first and sharing them with the group. And he's credited in the tweet here. But yeah, basically, we see a Xilinx Vertex 5 chip that's right on the board there. And so quickly, everybody ran around and was like, what the heck is this? We've also got a MadsTech video link. That's the next video where MadsTech discusses this, goes over a lot of the details, which I think are really, really good. He shows comparisons with like packages that we know from Xilinx, right? And this doesn't match a single package that Xilinx has ever released.
There's basically no way that this is a Xilinx chip.
Yeah, the features of the Xilinx chip would not be able to do H.265, which we're pretty sure they are doing. Right.
There's no way that the Xilinx chip is a real thing. It's several years old. And there is no way it has enough processing power to do the things that these goggles are doing. So not only does it not look like a Xilinx chip, it can't be a Xilinx chip. So what that means is that whatever this is, they like lasered off the markings and lasered on some new markings for reasons. Or they just
have a different... Yeah, the IHS they put on it was like, for whatever reason, the IHS has that on it. So
you think it's possible the heat spreader already had Xilinx on it and they just used the heat spreader?
We just really don't know. That's the problem with this. It is so hard to know.
We shouldn't accuse them of lasering the markings off since we have no actual evidence.
Engineering samples. There could be lasering. They could be fake marking on purpose. They could own Xilinx IP that we don't know about. I mean, there's so many things that could be possible here. Basically, what we do know is that it's not a Xilinx.
It's not a Xilinx.
And what it is what we reported to you on 2 weeks ago, which was the Artosyn chipset that FPV WTF talked about. So we know this is the Artosyn 9201, or we have a real good idea that this is the Artosyn 9201, because everywhere inside of this thing is yelling Artosyn 9201. When you go dig through the files, when you go look at identifiers, you go look at naming, when you extract the firmware, basically everything inside the firmware says Artosyn. And it matches up to what we expect to be an Artosyn 9201.
This is interesting.
Also,
I think a lot of people... Go ahead.
The layout also looks like Hubsan drones. Like there's a lot of pieces here that this is very clearly Artosyn.
So this is interesting because I think a lot of people watching this don't have any freaking idea who Artosyn is or why we care.
Yeah.
And the reason we care is because the big question that everyone has been debating since this project was announced is this DJI inside? And it's more than just sort of morbid curiosity. You know, Drew from Rotor Riot was like, "You don't deserve to know," or whatever his exact quote was.
Yeah, you don't get to know. Yeah.
And his I think he's confused maybe as to why people give a F. He said to me, I'll share this even though it was in a private communication. He was like, "Do people care what's in their TV? Do they care? They just buy the TV and they watch the TV." That's not a direct quote, and I'm like, one of the reasons people care is because it speaks to the future of the product, right? And they want to know where this radical thing came from. And it being an Artosyn chip, what does that mean? Because that answers that question, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Basically, from what we know from the history, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. You could check that out, and that'll be going up on the Clips channel later, the original conversation we had about that. But basically, when you look back, it looks like lead core. Lead core is basically an SoC, and lead core was a basis for the P1 chip that DJI used. So they could work with lead core. They built the P1 chip that went into OcuSync, and that makes our magic DJI FPV and the new DJI drones and all that stuff. The OcuSync is the magic of P1. However, it looks like they also licensed that technology out to other people, including a company called Cuxon Microelectronics, who created the Artosyn chipset. And the Artosyn chipset is apparently based on lead core very similarly. However, it looks more advanced because it can do H.265 and has a little bit different layout, maybe a different version or a newer version of it. So that's the Artosyn 9201 is the chipset that we're talking about specifically, which is the one that's identified in here. So
the backstory is that I assumed that DJI had invented what we now call the P1 chip. I didn't know the name of it at the time. That they had invented this proprietary silicon that made it possible for them to do the amazing things they do with OcuSync and with DJI FPV drone. And it turns out that they didn't invent it whole cloth, although I'm sure they had a big hand in making it what it was, but that a third company invented it, and DJI had some maybe exclusive access to some part of it, because Artosyn, the FPV WTF guys reached out to the company that makes those chips and said, hey, can we buy them? Because they're like, well, we'll make a goggle. And they were like, no, we don't sell. We only sell to DJI, Auto Robotics. No?
Well, let's be clear. Their response was, we are already because they asked Artosyn, not Legcore. So when they reached out to Artosyn specifically said, we are already working with an FPV company. That was the response.
Yeah, and they wouldn't sell to them.
However, but you're correct. The Artosyn stuff is also used in different drones, like the Hubsan system. So all the Hubsan drones, have this. It's almost the same layout, actually, as what is in the goggles. And that kind of people are suspicious of that as well.
Yeah,
however, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. However, I don't mean to cut you off. I know.
So one thing we can talk about though is like, it's even so close that Junus, the FPWTF, has created a tool that we have a link to here. That's actually a firmware file extractor that works on all Artosyn devices and even works on Hubsan drones because he developed it for these goggles. So it's that close where like it's just Artosyn, it's all Artosyn stuff. So
I want to address this comment from Scott Milano because I look at this as vindicate. So Walksnail and FatShark said it's not DJI inside. And I tried to figure out based on our sources and just our gut instinct, and I think I came to the conclusion that it was not DJI. They were not using DJI hardware, and I made a video. I actually made that video because I wanted in the future to be able to look back at that video and say, did I get it right? And now this comes out, and I feel like it vindicates FatShark and Walksnail when they said there is no DJI code in here and there is no DJI hardware in here. Now, Scott Milano says, what do you mean? They're using the same Artosyn chip that DJI uses. That's not true, though. DJI doesn't use the Artosyn chip.
No, they're using a derivative from Leadcore, which is also like the P1 was a derivative from Leadcore.
Exactly.
So it's like basically Leadcore got together with DJI and designed a fancy chip for DJI's video. Then Leadcore got together with Cuxon Microelectronics and developed the Artosyn chip for Cuxon Microelectronics to do their fancy video. That's the assumption. That's the understanding. It's not like the same. This isn't like a differently labeled thing that Leadcore's like, here, you get this one named P1, and you get this one named Artosyn, and you get this one named this. It appears to be two different pieces of silicon that were developed in two different capacities for two different companies.
Exactly. Now, there's obvious similarities because, if I make you a pizza and then the next day I make another pizza for somebody else, those two pizzas are going to have a lot in common because I made them, right? And so there's obviously similarities and relationships between the Artosyn chip that's in the FatShark and the P1 chips that's in DJI. But I believe sincerely that they were telling the truth, and they should get credit for telling the truth when they said, we are not using DJI hardware and we are not using DJI code. They have been vindicated, and if anybody was going to call them on that, it would be the FPV-WTF team. They have no reason to defend them, and I think they should. A lot of people are really... I had somebody leave a comment, and he said, how stupid do you think we are? You're treating us like we're idiots by not acknowledging the obvious. And I'm like, well, how stupid are you? Because the evidence is there and it supports the claims. I'm sorry. That's my take on it. I don't know. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean that's a fair statement. I don't know. I think people are maybe people are upset they aren't right. I don't know what's going on, but it's clearly not DJI. It's very similar in technology, but we've seen already like how differently it handles a lot of situations and how differently.
Oh yeah, and if you really thought it was DJI, then why is the performance so much worse?
Also true, yes.
Okay.
So all right. We also want to tell you, so the same team, FPV-WTF, Junus and everybody that rooted the other goggles actually got root on these goggles. However, this was a lot easier. And this goes to credit to M. Bundy, who was digging around, who had the original set of goggles. And he was actually able to guess the information.
So he got root access to the goggles by guessing the password. He said they got it on the second try.
Yeah, that's rough.
What was the password?
If you had to guess, the password was Artosyn.
Right. So first they tried root, and then they tried root Artosyn, and that was it. They guessed the password. So it's been hacked. Okay. Yeah,
so they have root access to the goggles. So they can do fancy stuff with the goggles. They're already working on developments for that and seeing where they can go. In addition to that, we've got some more tools coming out to kind of look at some comparisons. So we've got Devil, we've talked about before, has created a tool called a visual analyzer that takes the SRT data from your goggles and maps out the latency over time and a bunch of information. So we've actually got an imager link here from some info you provided. I got it's a shot from Junis of a test that you provided, and then also a test that Junis provided.
SRT.
Yeah. So these are not representative of the same test environment, but they're just an example of how the tool works and an idea of what the goggles may do. From what I've seen, most of the DJI tests look like the second result. None of them look like the first one. So I'm interested to see more testing from the changes in firmware.
In other words, you're saying the DJI has a lot more consistent latency with fewer spikes.
Yeah, so if we take a look, basically, we can see the spikes here, and those spikes are, the left-hand side, the first line is 50, so we're seeing those spikes go way up there. And you can see down on the latency distribution, there's a high latency distribution, whereas here with DJI, we're really sticking in a pocket. They're just holding in a specific pocket, and you're not getting those giant spikes, which might be the stutters people are seeing in the Walksnail goggles.
That's absolutely what it is. So in other words, Walksnail still has room to improve on their stuttering and latency.
Yes, and now if you want to check that out, or you want to test your DJI or Walksnail with your SRT, that's a normalized tool that's available from Devil. So that's pretty cool.
Awesome.
And then last but not least, we have a couple links for you if you wanted to check out the internals of the goggles. We talked about them earlier, but there's also the internals of the VTX. We've got links to repair.wiki where you can find that information, and others if you need it. One interesting thing about the VTX is they did decide to laser off the VTX so that heat spreader does not have anything on it. So for whatever reason, they decided to remove that one, but keep the one in the goggles. So kind of interesting to see that as well.
All right. Well, that is probably our biggest story this week, although we've got a couple other big stories coming up, as well as Blunty's rant at the end. Yeah. We are going to be doing a rant this week. I know people love it. Before we continue with the show, though, we're going to take a second and just do a couple plugs, and I'm going to start by plugging Blunty's website, ItsBlunty.com. And you can join Blunty's Patreon if you just want to make sure he can buy, beard oil and other comestibles. And you can also sign up for one-on-one calls with him. You want to get on the phone with somebody at a very reasonable hourly rate. He'll get on the phone with you, get on Zoom with you, and help you solve your quadcopter problems. So
very true.
Yeah, very true.
Also, we've got JB's site, fpvknowitall.com, where you can go check out new product shopping list, basically. So anything, we've got a cultivated list of a bunch of different kinds of products, whatever you're looking for. If you're a new pilot or an experienced pilot, what JB would recommend, along with a team of other folks that are trying to pick the best products for you to use in your FPV adventures.
We try. We also would like to let you know, if you do not get the chance to watch every single bit of every single live stream, I have a live stream clips channel. Blunty actually manages it. I love the thumbnails, Blunty. And basically highlights from my live streams as well as highlights from the news. And would love to have you as a subscriber over there to check out that stuff. You'll see stuff from my live stream that just funny stuff, as well as technical questions and so forth. Just really good there for people who don't get to watch the whole live stream.
Recently controversial video over there. We've got a clip from your live stream. We talked about 65 versus 75 millimeter whoops, and people had feelings about that.
Yeah, boy, do they. I also I don't know if you're going to decide to make this a clip or not. You may decide not to, but on my last live stream yesterday, I made the brave decision to criticize Elon Musk and his Starlink internet service, which resulted in a completely polite and uncontroversial discussion. So
civilized, no,
completely, everyone agreed with me.
Fair enough. I guess we'll see.
Anyway, that's our plugs. So check those things out. Now let's continue to our next story.
Yeah, and this is going to be a big one for some people, especially if you like tested stuff, because ExpressLRS 3.0 release candidate number 1 has finally come out, and this is a bunch of features all packed into one. Yeah.
It's insane. ExpressLRS 2.0 came out, and I was like, wow, you guys did so much! And then they just they didn't rest. They just kept going.
Yeah, they were building features while we were using 2.0. They were building features. So we talked about a few of these, but we'll quickly run through them. I mean, it's really crazy. So FLRC, we've been asking for that for a while. We finally got it. So now, for people that don't know, this is the thing that Tracer has only and doesn't have LoRa, right? And then Ghost has both FLRC and LoRa, which are the two different modulations. So now ELRS does as well. Included with this is 1,000 hertz mode, because we can get faster packet rates now. But even more interesting to me is the next feature called Deja Vu Diversity Aid. FLRC can be used because it's so fast. You can double the packets and then run at half the packet rate, and then guarantee you get a packet because you sent the packet twice.
Right. It's redundancy mode.
Yeah, basically redundancy mode. So basically packet. Yeah.
Credit where credit's due. Ghost did this first with pure race mode. This is I don't know the exact technical details, but it's essentially what Ghost is doing in pure race mode. And the idea is that if you want the absolute most consistent frame timing and the least amount of jitter or stutter, like you just get the best, most reliable stick feel. And they've got several different modes of that, including a 250 hertz mode, which sends the packets 4 times. If you really want to make sure they get through, just better. We're running late on the show, Blunty, so we'll just run through some other ones quickly. Better support for servos, full resolution aux channels, 10-bit aux channels. Like many of the major complaints about ExpressLRS just gone out the window. Fixed.
Something I think is cool. Something I think is cool real quick is just loan model. So you can actually like hit a button and loan the model to your friend with the Lua script, and they can like bind it to their drone kind of automatically. Get that Wi-Fi BetaFlight configurator. You get you can change your bind phrase now without reflashing. I mean, there's so many pieces to this. It's just really exciting. So.
Dwayne Degan in the Discord says, seems like you need a computer AI pilot to take advantage of these high update rates. Dwayne, you are correct that a human can't possibly need 1,000 hertz. Your fingers don't move that fast. But the advantage is you get decreased latency and you can reduce the filtering latency as well. So it's really more about reducing the latency of the control loop than actually needing to pull your fingers 1,000 times per second. Now, you're right, but there's more to it, and it does matter. Alrighty, so that's in release candidate. You can flash it now. If you have any tiny whoops with an SPI-based receiver, though, they're not going to run ExpressLRS 3.0, and you can't bind a 2.x to a 3.x. So you're going to have to make some hard decisions if you have an SPI-based receiver and a tiny whoop.
Yep, we talked about that, I think, a couple weeks ago in a PSA. But yeah, basically, SPI boards have to run off BetaFlight's code. They don't run off their own code. Serial-based receivers do run off their own code. So if you can update the receiver separately, if you're fine. If you can't, then it's unfortunately going to have to wait on BetaFlight. And currently, there's no way to make that happen clearly inside of a release cycle of BetaFlight. So yeah.
Alrighty, moving on. There's a link to that in the video description in the show notes if you want to check it out. Next up, there's a new camera from Insta360. Insta360 doesn't get as much credit as I think. I reviewed one of their cameras a while back and was pretty impressed with it for the price. But one of the things that they are not as known for is having the best image quality. It's good, but it's not like the best. But I think they're trying to change that, aren't they, Blunty, with this?
I believe so, yeah. So this is the Insta360 RS. Sorry, Insta360 1 RS 1-inch 360.
1-inch 360. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, so this is a 1-inch 360-degree camera, or 360 lens camera, which comes on a little thing. However, I'll tell you, they're paying for it.
$800.
Yeah, so
$800.
The bundle... Yeah, the bundle with their care and warranty and everything is $957. Basically, they want $1,000 out the door for this thing if you're buying their normal stuff. So I think this is kind of in a different class. I'm not sure that the specs are going to totally hold up to like that big of a jump from but it is a 360 camera and it might be the highest quality one we've seen. So
what I want to know is what's the resolution of the sensor, because there's two major things that affect the quality of the image, and one is the lens and one is the sensor.
So 21 megapixel 360 photos is something they say.
What does 21 megapixel mean? That doesn't mean anything to me. What's the resolution? 1-inch sensor is going to have great shadow detail, great dynamic range. That's true.
Here we go. So video resolution is a 5088 by 2944 at 30.
Wow. That's something.
Well,
That's really something.
yeah. Well, it's because it's stitched, right?
Yeah.
Or because it's like half that on each side, right?
So this is something that I think it's going to fit a niche for a certain person. If you don't use 360 cameras, you're not going to shell out $900 for this 360 camera. But if you're a person who relies on 360 cameras, this is potentially going to give you the best image quality of any 360 camera. And it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's definitely interesting to see them come out with this. So we'll have to see how it works out. There's definitely some 360 drones. I don't know that they're formatted for exactly this size, but hopefully.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is the same form factor as the other model that they have.
It's smaller.
Not, right?
I mean, I don't have one. I have the other camera that you're thinking of. I don't have this one. I think it's smaller.
Gotcha.
All righty.
All right.
Next up, we've got a competition from Radiomaster. Recently, a while back actually, somebody ported Doom to the Jumper T16. And I think Radiomaster's feeling a little left out.
Yes. So basically they are challenging someone to port Doom to your Radiomaster TX16. It must be playable using the user interface with touchscreens and everything. Whatever works intuitively and doesn't require extra mods, and you'll win AG01 gimbals. You'll win some Hall gimbals, AG01 gimbals for that.
Yeah, it's a $160 value. I mean, it's not nothing, but you probably have to already want to do this. I wonder if they're thinking it should be pretty easy to just take the Jumper port and kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but hopefully they knock it out.
I want to see Doom on the Walksnail goggles. It's been rooted, right? We should be able to get Doom on it.
I'm sure.
Okay. Can't wait.
Sure.
Alrighty. Speaking of cameras, where there's another high-end camera out there, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K. And this camera is very interesting to people who do cinematic stuff because it straddles the line between big, expensive cinema cameras like a Red camera and high-end consumer cameras like maybe a Sony. It's a cinema-grade camera at a semi-reasonable price, and that, of course, makes people want to fly it on a cinema drone. But there's some problems with that.
Yeah, so we've seen before, basically, people make them naked. So we've seen before the naked Blackmagic Pro Cinema 4K kit, and that was pretty popular with some of the cinema guys and went around a lot. So now Halo RC has released a 6K version. The 6K, they dug in, and split that BMPCC 6K all apart and built a 6K version of the naked camera. This is pretty cool for anybody who's interested in this kind of stuff. So basically, the 6Ks use EF-mounted lenses, which are really heavy and defeats the point of a naked camera. Causes issues because the lens needs extra support. So he built a sensor case for all the lenses, and he basically was able to run a different style of lens that only weighs 210 grams instead of a 650-gram EF mount lens. He saved a bunch of weight here, made it all naked for you, and he sells you kits or he'll sell you finished products. Pretty cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. Obviously, this is probably not going to be for your typical hobbyist. It's going to be for people who want to get professional grade cinematic stuff. It's been really interesting to me, Blunty, to see how drones have changed professionals' perspective on cameras, because there was a time when no professional shoot would be using GoPros. They just would be like, no, ew, GoPros. I mean, and now the fact that a GoPro gives you okay image quality and can fit on a tiny drone means that even on some surprisingly high-end shoots, we see them being used to get shots. We've got the Red Komodo, which is, it's only, what does it weigh, 2 pounds, I think, but that's lightweight for a cinema camera. And now we've got stuff like this. You've just got this huge variety of things from inexpensive and small to really expensive and big, all being used to get images. It's really neat.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff.
Well, thanks to Halo RC for putting that together. You can check it out.
Yeah.
People are like, why would you shoot in 6K? Well, like, especially like for framing reasons. You know, like if you shoot in 4K, you can crop in significantly and still have a 1080p image, which is more than enough.
Basically, you don't lose any. You could crop to 4K,
right?
You know, if you wanted to, right?
So
there's
you
a
could
lot of different options.
You could shoot at 6K with a wide-angle lens and then do stabilization, and you could have a 20% crop for your stabilization and still have a 4K image. That's one of the reasons why you shoot in 6K. Nobody's producing content at 6K for people to consume, really.
Yeah.
No. Anyway, that's really cool. Next up, we've got a recurring segment called the Drone Cinema. Oh, no, I didn't do the right. Oh, man, I hate it when I don't bring the title in. Next up, we've got a recurring segment called the Drone Cinematic of the Week. People send us cool cinematic drone shots. You know, Blunty, before we get into that, there was a debate on Facebook about what a cinematic drone... Somebody was like, stop calling your shot cinematic. Just because you didn't do a power loop doesn't mean it's cinematic. What do you think the definition of a cinematic shot is?
Something that's cool to watch that, like, is not vomit-inducing for the general public.
This person's argument was that if it doesn't look like it could be in a film, it's not cinematic. And I'm like, I don't know if I feel that way.
I think we got different opinions, but that's fair.
Cinematic means... A lot of people just say cinematic if they are flying slowly and not doing flippy flops. I'm like, okay, well, maybe... I'm not sure that's cinematic, but that's like the lower end of cinematic.
I think cinematic is you're presenting something. Like you're showing... Like I'm filming this to film it, not to fly, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm using that to present something to the viewer. Like that's cinematic to me. Whatever you do past that is maybe good or bad cinematic.
So you feel like a real estate fly through?
Yeah,
would that be cinematic?
100%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I'm confused about what cinematic means, but my thought would be anytime you're like filming.
The root of the word is cinema.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. All right. Sure. Well, here's our drone cinematic of the week. I'm not going to play the audio in case. Is there music in this one?
There is, yes, and it is.
So I don't want to get a copyright strike. I'm not going to play the audio. And anyway,
good music. I'll just say that.
I want you guys to go click through and give this person their clicks. I don't want to be like stealing their clicks. So we're going to show it to you. There's a link in the video description if you want to watch the whole thing. And hang on, let me get this ready to go. What are we looking at here, Blunty? Take us in.
Yeah, so we looked at that Red Bull downhill a while back, and I thought this was pretty cool. This isn't maybe as technically detailed, but this is another great little mountain bike thing. And this was exposure for a lot of viewers. It's got 131,000 views on, I'm going to mess this name up for sure, Remy Metallier or Metaller, I don't know, something like that.
Sounds about right to me.
But yeah, he's got 300,000 subs, and he does mountain biking stuff, and he got chased by a drone. So I thought this was pretty cool. And yeah, this is pretty cool stuff.
Wow.
Hopefully this is one, to me, this is one of those like viral clips that's pretty well shot. It's not like amazing, but it is really good, well done, and can definitely expand the audience based on, people who like mountain biking stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Really cool stuff. That is a 5-minute video, and we've only watched about a minute of it. But see, I would say, is this cinematic? Because this would not be in a movie. This is sporting.
Whose movie?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if there was a movie
like, yeah, I don't know. Like, if you make a movie without a Steadicam, like, is that? I don't know. Like, I get what you're saying, but like, I think maybe it's like feels semantic to me.
Yeah. So. Well, of course.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Next up, we got 2 more segments this week. The first one is It's Barely News, where we cover short items that didn't quite make it to the full news, but we still thought you'd want to know about. And then we're going to do our rant. We're going to do our rant. First up in It's Barely News, people want to shoot Amazon drones out of the sky. I mean, duh.
Yes. Well, you knew it would be happening, but one channel reports to you about their experiences in Lockford, California. People are real angry and basically are threatening to start shooting at drones. So they don't want them over their land. They don't want to hear them or see them. And they're threatening to blast them out of the sky. So the local areas there are trying to, everybody's trying to figure out how to suss out the situation. Because basically a lot of people are like, I'm going to do it. And they're like, please don't, because that's illegal. Yeah,
I mean,
so
it's never
interesting.
good when you start suing your customers in a small town. That's not going to go
Yes.
well.
100%. I would agree with you there. But yeah,
Alrighty.
interesting. We'll see how that develops. And yeah, hopefully nobody's shooting down drones for real.
Well, we'll find out, I guess. Next up, we're going to talk again about this. There was a 3D printer that had a drone motors attached to it. And
Yeah,
we were kind of confused.
We looked at a YouTube short. I couldn't find much about it, but there was actually a video I missed by 3D printing nerd who went together and looked at some of these options. And one of them is about 10 minutes in the video, 10 and a half minutes in the video, drone printing. And he goes over and looks at the drone that's printing stuff, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
3D printing nerd's got this video. You could check out more details. He talks to the designers and kind of what the purpose is and how it works and stuff. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. Some more information.
Yeah. It's hanging, it's dangling like a sky cam at a football game, but then it's also got a flight controller and is using the props to move the nozzle. Again, we're not going to try and steal his content. We just want to tell you it's out there. And if you want to know more about, like, WTF is even going on here, can this I'm not even sure how they could get enough precision to make this work, to be honest with you, but apparently it works. You can go check out that video. It's linked down below. Alrighty. Hybrid drone.
Yeah, next up we've got
drone.
Next up, you asked, I believe, about a hybrid drone in one of your streams, and
I did.
People responded by sharing this drone, which is a electric and fuel-based, like basically hybrid version of a drone, which is kind of neat. It's meant for like heavy lift and long duration flights. It kind of uses both technologies at its best advantages, hopefully at least. To do its stuff. So if you scroll down a little bit, there's a video down there you can check out if you keep going.
Now, this thing's over 55 pounds, isn't it? You're gonna need a license to fly these.
Maybe just under, but probably I would guess it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a video there
cool.
we could check out if we want to see that at all. But
oh yeah, shooting 2-to-1 ratio. That's really. Oh, you know what's even better than 2-to-1 ratio is that when you take a 16:9 video and then you letterbox it into a 2-to-1 video. What are you doing? What are you doing? Sorry, AV nerd here.
so anyway, yeah, they've got a hybrid drone, which is kind of neat. I've seen a couple different things similar to this, but nothing quite like this solution. So it'll be interesting to see if this kind of thing takes off.
Yeah, I mean we know it. We know it has certain uses. It's one of the best ways to get an ultra-long flight time. Nothing has the energy density of gasoline or liquid electrochemicals. Alrighty. That's pretty cool. Well, now we've got some news about Fettec. The Fettec OSD is now controllable with a third-party screen.
Yeah, we got this shared by James in your Discord, actually, who's shown us the new feature that Fettec has added. If you want to wire up a screen, you can do that. So you have an external screen for your OSD. Maybe you need to see it if you have DJI or something, or maybe you just like to have a field solution that you don't have to look in the goggles for. You can wire up a little screen here and get all your setup. Pretty cool.
Nice, because the Fettec, you can do the entire setup of the Fettec flight controller through the OSD. So this could be a way to just literally manage your whole flight controller, especially if you didn't have goggles or you didn't want to put your goggles on. That's pretty slick.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff.
That's pretty slick. Well, those Fettec guys sure are smart. They sure are coming up with cool stuff. Tell us more about this one, Blunty.
Yuji Naka is flying FPV drones that look like a Knights character, and he's actually racing. So I got another link in there of him racing. Not very well, but he's learning. But this is relevant to me because it's video games. So yeah, Yuji Naka is the creator of things like Sonic, Bomberman, Knights, and more recently Balan Wonderworld, which was the trash fire. But very cool to see somebody getting into more people getting into FPV. So kind of neat.
Nice. Oh, he's got some up tilt too, boy. That looks like 45 degrees at least. Very nice. Very nice, very cool. A little crossover between games and FPV. I love this one, Blunty. A lot of people don't realize that this is an issue. That is in the spring. deer will have fawns, and the deer will go to eat, and they'll leave the fawns just sitting in a field, and the fawns just sit still. And the problem is that the fawn's instinct is to stay exactly where they are. And if they're threatened or scared, they will just hunker down and try not to move. And then when the tractors come out to mow the field, then the inevitable happens. And it's really bad. Like, no one wants to mow over a baby deer.
Yeah, the goal is like literally to not do it, and it's very difficult to like get them out of the fields when you when you don't know where
they don't want to
so.
go. They're like, I ain't going nowhere without my mom, and mom is like, I ain't going nowhere near that tractor.
Yep. So now there's a solution which is pretty cool, which is basically people are flying drones with thermal imaging up in the sky before they mow, and then identifying all the baby deer and clearing them out. So they can mow safely, and the people don't have to walk the fields and hope they got them all, and there's no question. And yeah, it's a super cool, safe way to protect these baby deer.
Yeah, I think we all can agree that's a good thing. Can we see some? Have we got any thermal footage that we can see? Oh, there we go. Everybody likes thermal footage. Hey, what are you doing? And maybe you can use the drone to scare the deer away.
See that right there? You can see the little spot there. Pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. Drones making the world a better place. We got one more. Bid to replace... I haven't watched this video either, Blunty. Bid to replace July 4th fireworks with drones ends in frustration. I love that title so much. It's cracking me up.
Yeah, so basically we have this problem here too in Colorado, not this year, but we normally do, where we typically aren't allowed to fire off fireworks during the 4th of July because of fire risk. And so one of the solutions to that, obviously, and just solutions in general to the idea of drones or fireworks, is to do drones instead, to do the drone light shows and cool stuff. Yeah, it would be pretty cool. But unfortunately, they had to cancel this because of wind, which is something you don't have to do for fireworks. So kind of introducing new problems, and creating issues that basically kind of show that there's other benefits to fireworks than just being like analog and stuff, right? So it's kind of a question of like, maybe sometimes in the future it'll be drones and less weather and then fireworks or like whatever. But I don't know, kind of interesting. Hopefully more places will do drones instead of fireworks, even if they don't have fire risk, because I hate fireworks, but that's just me.
Yeah. And I'm willing to bet that you're not the only one in your house who doesn't like fireworks.
Yeah, Henry has been scared. They're still shooting. I mean, right behind me, I could still hear them. They'll go for a month or more here.
Oh, wow.
And Henry
Wait, didn't you just say they're illegal?
No, they're not now because it's rained, so it's safe.
Oh, I see. I got you.
Yes.
This year it's okay.
But every other year this is the first year in this house it's been this bad. So, yeah.
Okay. Now it's time for our rant of the week, Blunty, and I feel like it's your rant, so you should get to introduce it. How would you like to introduce it?
So we talked a little bit in the PSA about BetaFPV shipping boards with ICM 20689 gyros with RC6, so they brick when you power them up. I have quite a few issues with this, and I feel like we could maybe talk a little bit about rational thought, and then we could maybe rant a little bit. Actually, I feel like it could fit both of these in this segment. So the first thing I want to mention is just like, how did the RC6 situation happen? Why was the RC6 still posted? Like things like that, right? Because basically my question to the devs was, and I talked a little bit to some of the guys today in the Discord, was basically like, once the issue was identified where people knew that there were gyros getting bricked, why was our RC6 not pulled? Why didn't we go back to RC5 and let RC5 coast until we had a solution in a new RC6 or RC7, right?
They put a big announcement at the top of the release notes. Hey, if you have a 2689 gyro, this might brick your gyro, but they didn't take it down. And I guess on the one hand, it's like, well, not everybody has that. Shouldn't the other people get to test RC6? But that's like, if you release something that makes like cars blow up 3% of the time, they do a recall. That's too many times. And the devs you would hope that the devs would care that people are bricking their gyros and be like, oh, we can't do this.
Yeah, so I think part of it is you got a lot of members on the team. You've got a lot of confusion when users do reports because you're never sure if a user's correct. There were also random reports at the time. There were also random reports at the time that users promising that this happened on RC5. So there were questions then, what if we roll back and we didn't need to, and then we've rolled back a firmware and there was no benefits from rolling back the firmware?
And there's a perspective of, hey, we told you it was a release candidate. Whenever you flash, and people get very complacent with release candidates because usually they're fine, but it is still not in final release, and it is possible there will be a new bug. And
yeah. So I think the bottom line is that this release was totally different than most releases will be moving forward. The devs have promised me that, and it seems from every indication that will be the case. This was a really extended release. There were changes in management, and there were basically major issues that caused delays, where there were, there was an SPI rewrite for the ELRS code already in RC. There was a big change in failsafes. There was all kinds of things that basically they felt like needed to happen. And part of this was because the cycle was so long.
You could argue
it might have been easier.
You could argue, yes, exactly. You could argue, why did they add support for a new gyro, new hardware, etc., in the middle of a release candidate or in the middle? Right. Why did they not wait for the next release? And it's it would have been 5 years until that. They wanted to support the customers, and their motivation there was sound. And I think we agree that adding support for that gyro, I mean, manufacturers started shipping product with that gyro, and the Betaflight devs said, hey, I guess we're going to support it. And they rushed to support it, and oops, there was a problem. Yeah. So the devs are completely off the hook, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I feel like what I'm saying is, moving forward, I don't think this will happen again. I don't think it's really going to be possible from the way they're handling the release cycle, from the speed they're going to be moving things forward, and the way that the dev team is kind of, has a handle on what's going on. I think that it was kind of a scramble to get everything together and make everything work and take this whole giant jumble of stuff and fit it into 4.3 and make it all work. So I think moving forward, it seems like this will be a resolved issue. We shouldn't see something like this happen again. And if it does happen again, I think they better know how to handle it in the context of a smaller release with less full features and with hopefully there aren't a bunch of companies flashing release candidates onto their boards when they ship them.
This is what we're actually ranting about.
Yes.
It is. It's frustrating when manufacturers ship nightly builds. There was an old version of the Mobula 6 that shipped with a nightly build, a Betaflight 4. Whatever on it, and it had some bug in it, and like a year after that version of Betaflight was released, they were still shipping it with that gosh darn nightly build on it. Manufacturers, in this case though, I think that the justification is there because some of these boards had flight controllers with ExpressLRS SPI receivers on them, and they simply could not run without Betaflight 4.3.
The justification for flashing a release candidate is proper. I do agree with that. And part of the reason I say, I think future will be different is because they won't have, hopefully, the same incentive to be flashing ahead, right? Hopefully we'll be more maintained and they'll have a better, there won't be these goals. But also, there's, lost my train of thought. Basically, the other problem here is that you have to test things. I'm of the opinion that if you sell a product, that product should have been tested before it leaves the factory. I don't expect you to do crazy testing. I don't expect to solder up a board to a flight.
Part of the rant where we shit on BetaFPV. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and anybody else who doesn't QC out of the factory, we know they're not doing that because they don't even boot the board the first time to have it break. Right. And I think part of my problem is that you could do things to simulate a test environment that I don't think would add that much labor, right? I can't imagine how much labor it would add for you to have some system that you just write the Betaflight configurator side on your own to do the testing for you, like a test bench. And then when you plug it in, it just runs through all the checklists.
Does this look like it? QC is a thing. Properly? And we know that because, for example, Brain FPV and SP Racing both brag, and deservedly so, that they QC every board before they ship it. I'm pretty sure that Brain FPV flashes the boards one by one at home on a laptop. I think I've seen photos of that on their Facebook or Instagram, which seems very time consuming. But by God, you know damn well and good it's been flashed and powered up. And a lot of times the attitude is we're going to ship the product. It probably will work. If it doesn't work, the retailer will replace it, which sometimes pans out and sometimes doesn't. And in a case like this, it really bites them in the ass because they're, in this specific case, BetaFPV is shipping, they shipped a whole shitload of these tiny whoops with a release candidate that upon power up has a dice roll's chance of just bricking the gyro. And now what? You told me that they couldn't even replace them for you because they don't have any more.
Yeah, in that video we linked and is linked again in this rant, Mr. Shutterbug says that he contacted BetaFPV for a replacement. Yeah, and they were like, "Hey, we sold all these. We can't send you one," and that was their answer. Yeah. So he contacted Race Day Quads and they were able to do the exchange. But and then he got the new one, did the DFU when it worked. But unfortunately,
and how many people are unaware? They don't watch the FPV news. So I mean, I guess they get what they deserve, and they don't watch Mr. Shutterbug's channel. And they just buy this BetaFPV tiny whoop. Maybe it's their first quad. They power it up, and then the damn thing just spins up into the air.
Well, I'm just going to say, I don't know that I've seen that it is guaranteed to be on the prepackaged whoops. It's possible. I just haven't guaranteed to see that. What I've seen it on is the boards you buy. So if you buy
it's only I see.
Yes, it may very possibly maybe on some of the whoops as well, because they're probably flashed the same way with the tool. And they're just all the configurations applied at once, so it may not even be booted either. They're probably not booted either, but I'm not aware of them on whoops yet, so it's very possible, but I have not confirmed that.
Well, so, it's the world we live in.
Anyway, listen, FPV, listen, Happy Model, whoever else is doing this, come the fuck on. Like, I don't think this is that hard. Like, this should be a great example of why you shouldn't do this. That's what I'm saying. Right? There's plenty of reasons you could do this and you get away with it for a long time and there's no problems. But when you run into issues like this where you haven't tested something and you're sending a freaking release candidate out to a user and you haven't even booted the board and it's causing unrecoverable issues, like, sorry, that's really random, and sorry, that probably was never going to happen, and sorry, that's a crazy chance that was the case, that you happen to pick the RC that bricked these gyros, but like, that's on you, that's not on anybody else.
Yep.
So get it together.
Here's what it boils down to, Blunty. Yeah. It costs more to do proper QC than it does to ship a product and roll the dice and then eat the product when their reputation.
Hold on a minute. Hold on,
must.
Dude. Okay. Hold on, dude. Okay, hold on. So my thought here is, like, they wrote a custom fucking tool for their radio. They can't write a custom tool to check the boards. They don't need a person.
Why did they do
that? You just plug it into USB, you plug in the battery, and then it does.
They made a brand new radio. They made their own forked version of OpenTX for their radios, and they wrote their own GUI to make users' life easier, rather than just using OpenTX Companion.
Yeah.
But the time and human labor to QC these boards before they go out the door, can't do that.
I'm saying not even that time. I'm saying the time to write a tool so nobody has to do the job. I'm saying you could literally take a tool that you plug into USB and it does the work. No manual person has to ever look at anything. They literally just have to sit and plug a board in, or run it on the STM flasher. Maybe there's some way to do it through that. Like, I'm just saying, like, I feel like the effort has not been put in versus the idea that there's some idea that they're saving money. Like, I think it's just like they don't care. There's no reason that they need to do that. So anyway.
Alrighty. Well, you know, I'm not gonna argue with you about that. That I agree with you completely. Good rant. That is going to bring us to the end of the news today. If you guys have any submissions you think we need to include on the news, make sure to email news@fpvknowitall.com. I got one super chat from Acro Cheese FPV. Thanks for a $5 super chat, Acro Cheese. I've been gone for a year. What's new in FPV in regards to performance? A year? Well, DJI was still around, I guess. Walksnail and ExpressLRS. Yeah.
That's probably about right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And BetaFlight 4.3. So.
And BetaFlight 4.3 is finally out. Welcome. It was in development when he left, and now it's finally back.
That is true.
All right. All righty, folks. We are going to see you next week for the FPV news. Same time. Thank you so much, Blunty, and thank you guys for coming out.
Yeah. Take it easy, guys. Thank you so much.
All right.